Hi everybody, this is Toppy bringing you my Fire Emblem 9 hard mode 100% growth LTC. This will be a full recruitment deathless run, and yes, I have several brand new turn saves to show off, and yes, there'll be copious rigging involved. I knew basically nothing about this game going in, so I should thank a lot of people who answered my questions and gave me suggestions like Fishcott, like USS Squadron Captain, Don151, Agro Incarnate, Kirby Master, and anybody else who might have just kept me company as was working on this game. Several other runs of this game served as valuable reference, such as Cheeky's FE9 incomplete recruitment runs, Typhoon Carter's full recruitment run, Mission is old Japanese normal mode incomplete recruitment run, and even Mogul Boss's FE9 0% growth LTC and Pablo's individual chapter LTC. This playthrough will be on a second game save file, so we get the growth band items, so they're just extra cash as far as we're concerned, since there aren't any units with growths that are an exact multiple of 100. Prologue is basically a scripted level up for Ike. All weapon hit rates are 100 and nobody can crit. Interestingly, this is a place where hard mode actually saves the turn over normal mode, because on normal mode, Boy will not attack you in enemy phase, forcing you to take an extra turn. You'll notice I turned off auto end turns. That's because I wanted to use the fast enemy phase camera trick, but it took me until several chapters later to finally understand how it worked, and even then my execution of it will be a lot clumsier than an actual speedrunner. Ike himself is our lord and is basically the only sword user who will care about training for the entire run. Well, one of our other units will gain swords on promotion, but they're not really the reason to use her. In the early game, there's a lot of combat he needs to do, so we care a lot about optimizing his EXP in the upcoming maps. That's Prologue completed in 4 turns. Chapter 1 is a slightly more interesting map with us needing to seize with Ike. The first thing we do is visit the village near the start with Ike to pick up the steel sword. Unfortunately, we will not have access to a convoy until Chapter 8, so we have to discard one of Ike's 4 iron swords, which I believe is a result of some localization bug with the tutorial. This steel sword will be extremely important all through the early game as Ike's primary weapon, as iron swords are a little too weak for him to one-round most of the enemies. He does weigh Ike down by 6 to 2 AS right now, but every time he levels up, he will effectively gain plus 2 AS with it, since weight mitigation is strength in this game. On this map, the steel sword is important to let Ike two-shot the axe users on this map. We also get 3 new units, Titania, Boyd, and Oscar. Titania is the Jagan of this game, with availability only second to Ike, but this is a 100% growth LTC, so as soon as we can start sandbagging her, we will. She can use axes and lances, though axes are almost always going to be her weapon of choice. She will contribute with her hoppers and decent combat all the way until chapter 16. The nature of many early game maps will prompt her to get several boss skills, so at least she will grow for a while. Boyd is our first filler foot unit. Most prior LTCs trained him to do miscellaneous things, but we won't bother with him too much since we have more important EXP targets to worry about. Importantly for us, he can shove Ike. Oscar is our first cavalier. His bases aren't anything special, but chapter 5 is a defend map where we will be able to stuff a lot of EXP down his throat. On this map, he won't be fighting anything and will just help rescue drop Ike into position and get the Seraphrone village. Something which I do in the background in the early game is trade around the growth bands to ensure nobody levels up holding their corresponding band, and in general I want to ensure I keep all my items and don't have to discard anything beyond that one iron sword drop, so I try to free the inventories of units who are going to visit villages or get droppable items. You might also see places where the video seems to cut a little abruptly. Those are me cutting out arrow wiggling to burn RNs, or just me writing and freezing RNs in memory. Ike needed to crit that Myrmidon for the sake of EXP. That combined with the fighter Boyd chipped for him, let him hit level 3, and then he could cleanly one-round all the other enemies that went for him. He did need to dodge a little bit to survive. On turn 2, Titania will kill the boss, clearing the way for Ike to seize, and that'll be chapter 1 in 2 turns. Chapter 2 is our first route map and also our first new turn save. Much like with FE8 Chapter 2, it was long known that a 3-turn of this map was theoretically possible, and indeed Machina even got the 3-turn in their normal mode run. However, this game did historically have great tools for rigging, and the map also had a reputation for requiring Ike to crit every single enemy. With some precise EXP management, I've improved the clear to the point where there's only one enemy face crit needed. Oscar will handle the 3 enemies to the north, which he can do as long as he doesn't miss any attacks. We're joined by our first staff user, Briss. Briss's base stats are actually determined partially by auto levels, which I didn't realize at the time, so you could get him better base stats if you adjusted your starting RN seed appropriately. It's all good, there's enough leeway in the run. Riss is going to be the primary rescue user of the run, though I didn't realize it early on, so consider this run also a demonstration of how lax his training regimen is. The rescue stuff is B rank and shows up in chapter 20, so we have lots of time. Missiona's Japanese run similarly used Riss as the primary rescue staffer, though most English LTCs have preferred another unit who will join a couple of chapters later. The main argument I will make for choosing Riss for the job is that Riss needs to be trained in any case, as he's the only light magic user in the game, and as such the only unit who can use the one Purge tome we get in the late game. Purge is a B rank tome, but thankfully bishops in this game have a special skill called Lumina, where their light magic and staves share a common weapon rank, so training Riss to rescue and Purge rank happens simultaneously, unlike the other primary rescue staff candidate. Riss can also shove Ike, which will matter a few times in the run. Ike carries the brunt of the fighting in this map, one-rounding enemies with the Steel Sword. Hitting level 4 lets him cleanly one-round every remaining enemy on the map except the boss. Technically, Oscar can gain more EXP by strategically missing the axe fighters a couple of times, but his EXP plan is thankfully not that tight, and while I have better tools for rigging than past LTCs at this game, they're still not as good as the ones for GBAFE, so I pass up on these kinds of marginal optimizations. As you might have noticed, the game is also very sluggish with its forced animations, so it gets really tedious to micro-optimize. Something to note is that almost all human enemies in this game have retreat AI, where when their HP drops below a certain threshold, I think 40%, they will try to get to a vulnerary, a priest, or a healing push, so we'll need to manage our damage until we can just one-round enemies. Boyd needs to clear Ike's way with a 2% crit. Boyd's skill Tempest doubles the effect of Biorhythm, which makes his hit rates go all over the place during his time in the early game. Riss's skill Serenity does the opposite, though it won't really matter much. Titania also has a skill Counter, which has a skill % chance of forcing enemies to also take the physical damage inflicted on her, but it will barely matter outside of maybe stealing kills she was supposed to set up. Dealing with that batch of 3 enemies will get Oscar his first level up. Boyd, Oscar, and Riss will leave the party after this map. Riss returns in chapter 4, while the other 2 will rejoin in chapter 5. For story reasons, Titania wasn't with us on the first 2 turns, but with the power of 100% growth, Ike is going to carry the day. Riss had to shove Ike turn 1 to enemy face the fighter and the brigand, so we could only get 2 heals on him in this clear. We need to shove Ike again with Boyd on this turn to let him reach the square from which he can clean up the entire top section of the map. Maybe you'll notice me opening Titania's stat screen a few times. That's because that just burns a large number of RNs, and it was just the easiest way for me to get an enemy face where Ike got the crit on the boss that he needed. When this enemy face plays out, I might as well add that Oscar needs to promote by chapter 16. For those not in the know, this game generally requires units to reach level 21 to promote, with only a few Master Seals to let units promote earlier. Thankfully, once we get access to the base, we'll also unlock something to make getting EXP easier. As previously mentioned, Ike only needs to crit the boss here. Any other crits he got were just a side effect of the RN string. And that will be chapter 2 in 3 turns. Chapter 3 has Ike and Titania join up with Shannon and Gatry. Shannon is a sniper with Provoke who's supposed to be a secondary Jagan, since quite a few of the early game enemies are tuned to let him kill them with the steel bow or chip them with the iron bow, with Provoke letting him draw aggro away. But the implementation is somewhat confounded by the fact that snipers have an innate crit boost in the localization, meaning he'll sometimes just kill enemies anyway. The inner mechanics of Provoke aren't fully understood, but it probably is just a flat boost to enemy targeting priority for that unit. Combined with Shannon's lack of wand range, it is fairly absolute in the early game. Shannon's availability is rather spotty. He'll be with us until chapter 5, leave, rejoin during chapter 7, before leaving again until he can be re-recruited in chapter 19, at which point his stats definitely won't be good enough. Gatry is an armor knight with similar issues, though at least he rejoins permanently during chapter 13. Both of them will help out where they can, but they do not need any EXP, meaning the only EXP target we have deployed is Ike. A 2-turn clear of this map is possible, but recruiting Marcia later on will require Ike to talk to her on this map, and she's just 1 square out of Ike's reach in 2 turns when Titania is also going off to kill the boss. I played around with this for a while, but I couldn't see a way of making both of those things happen at the same time. Somewhat frustratingly, the reason she's out of range is that in hard mode there's an enemy on her spawn tile, forcing her to spawn 1 tile above it. As you might have noticed, Chapter 3 also gave us access to the preparations menu where we can adjust units' inventories and starting positions. However, unlike in FE7 and 8, we cannot use stat boosters from preparations, meaning we either have to spend a player phase action or wait until we get access to the base in Chapter 8. Thankfully, we don't need to use any stat boosters early on to save turns. Shanon's Provoke baited away the hand axe fighter who'd otherwise go for Marcia, letting Titania grab it from him on turn 2. We arranged our units in a specific way to maximize Ike's EXP gain, though he does need to enemy phase crit the first fighter to farm all of the kills. Marcia herself will join a little bit later on, so I'll talk about her when she actually joins our squad. Here I think she might have a chance of death if every single enemy lands their attacks on her, but that's not too likely. Sinan's Provoke will take the heat off of Marcia on this enemy phase as well. Something which I should mention is for Shannon and Gatry, when they leave the party the first time at the end of Chapter 5, we're not going to have access to their inventory in preparations, so we can't, we have to make sure that at the end of Chapter 5, their inventories are set up how we want them for Chapter 7. At the end of Chapter 7, they do dump all of their stuff in the convoy before going away, so we don't need to worry about getting their stuff off of them. The boss has a hand axe, which is why Titania could not enemy phase him. If we had filled up her inventory and had her drop the iron axe she used to kill the hand axe fighter with, then she would be able to enemy phase the boss, and that's how the 2-turn of this map without Marcia would work. Gatry is heading off to the southeast in order to get the elixir from the village. I don't think we ever use it, so it's just potential money, since if I remember correctly, I don't even end up bothering to sell it because this game showers you in money. On turn 3, we just clean up, and Titania will dispatch the boss with a crit to complete the map. Chapter 4 is a kill boss and will be our second new turn save, though it requires combat rigging to pull off. We're joined by a new unit, Soren, our early game anima mage number 1. As longtime viewers of my channel know, early game anima mages become important LTC units the moment siege tomes and or movement staves enter the picture, and Path of Radiance is no different. The game is very generous with siege tomes compared to other games if you ignore ones where you can just buy them, and we will need to train up all the growth mages in this run. Most English LTCs have used Soren as their primary rescue staffer, and while in my run I do train into B staves because I assumed I needed both Soren and Risk to use rescue in chapter 28, I never actually use either rescue or Hamon with him, so all of his staff grinding later in the run only benefits him in terms of his EXP gain. Soren brings with him a wind tome, and this is a very precious weapon to us. We only get access to the armory and vendor when we get access to the base in chapter 8, so we have to manage our weapon uses, particularly on our 1 to 2 range weapons, with care early on. Soren in particular is bitten by this because his wind tome is the only weapon he will get until a fire tome that drops partway through chapter 7. He needs to help save turns in that time frame, so even though we can combat rig by freezing the RNG in a suitable position for him, we won't fully maximize his potential combat in the upcoming maps. Soren comes with the skill Adept, which gives him a skill percent chance of attacking an extra time for a particular regular attack, though I believe this bonus hit might not give weapon experience. On this map, he has a real trial by fire, since he has to slaughter all the enemies including the boss starting from base. We've set his wind tome to have 100 crit, which is legal. He can pull crit on all the enemies that he kills at the point when he kills them, and freeze the RNG in a position where he will dodge the enemy attack and counter with an Adept proc. Tomes do have abysmally low might, so there will still be enemies, especially early in the enemy phase, that Soren doesn't one-shot, that he needs to double or proc Adept for even with maximal crit. On normal mode, there is a known one-turn strat for this map that involves having Shannon start from the best starting spot, shoving him 3 times with Riss, Ike, and Katri, and having him move his full 7 move to just barely enter the boss's movement range. He would then have to enemy phase the boss with a double crit. This strategy doesn't work on hard mode because of the increased enemy density, so one-range enemies clog up all the spots around him, so the boss can't actually attack him when he moves at the end of the turn. However, we do have a unit in our army who's light enough to be carried by anyone and has 1 to 2 range, Soren. With 1 shove, Soren can kill the 1 enemy in the way, and then Titania and Shannon with 2 shoves drop him at the edge of the boss's attack range. A few enemies do go for Shannon because of Provoke, but Soren can clean up the area around himself with his hacked dodges and crits to seal the 1 turn. He grows 5 levels on this 1 enemy phase and burns through about half of his wind tome. The 1 enemy who hit him had 100 hits, so nothing could be done about that, but thankfully he has the durability to take that 1 hit. The position I dropped him in is the one which maximized his EXP gain after some experimenting. While we wait for this long enemy phase to play out, I suppose I can talk a bit about our long-term objectives. As previously mentioned, we will get a lot of siege tomes later in the game, and we need to train up users of them. Soren will of course build up wind ranks from the things he does in the early game, and he will hit Sea Wind for Blizzard access around the time he promotes. Promotion in this game raises weapon rank to class bases, so we won't go out of our way to have him use other kinds of magic before he promotes, which will happen during chapter 9. After that, we will focus on his Thunder rank because whenever he does fight, because we need 3 bolting users for chapter 18, and you'll see him grinding up his staff rank since for most of the run I assumed it would be relevant. The EXP from spamming staves is still relevant to him since he wants capped or close to capped magic for chapter 27. Given the abundance of siege tomes in this game, mages are almost like ballisticians from Shadow Dragon, except they can still fight normally, with the only penalty being that they have less movement than regular infantry. I didn't acknowledge it earlier, but we got Ike's PRF, the Regal Sword. It's the standard FE Rapier clone for the Lord, though 2x weapon effectiveness makes it rather weak at cutting through armor knights. Enemies in this game are really bulky, and unlike Shadow Dragon, we can't just forge more might onto it. Still, it comes with 10 innate crit, and Ike will pull it out on a handful of occasions. Soren will kill the boss shortly, and that'll be chapter 4 in 1 turn. Chapter 5 is our first defend map, and as such, there isn't too much for me to say. It's a chance for us to train up Oscar, who will take the bottom left side of the map. We also get a heal every turn with Riss, and feed some kills to Ike. Boyd also gets some kills in the process, just because we have nobody else who can take them, and sometimes we want to kill enemies just so they won't get in our way. Soren helps body block and shove rather than fight on the map because of the aforementioned tome durability issue, though I think in hindsight he could have spent up to 2 uses of wind here. Titania will kill most of the enemies in the south since she can handle big enemy faces. While each individual kill isn't worth much to her, she at least will gain a level to help her perform her duties as our sole 9-move unit for the time being better. You'll notice that only a subset of the screen is visible. That's because of a screw up on my end while recording, and I was too lazy to redo the entire chapter after I realized. You can at least see everything that's relevant, like who goes where and who kills what enemy, though some of the trading of items might not be visible. I also had to fix something at the very end of the map. The video you're watching has the fixed version, but you might see some minor inconsistency with the playtime later on. The map is also the first of 2 Fog of War maps. We don't have a torch staff, so Risk can't feast, and it mostly just means we have to spot enemies before player phasing. This map is only Fog of War in hard mode, I believe. Shinan and Gatry leave at the end of the map and rejoin during Chapter 7, and we need to make sure the Steel Lance ends up in Gatry's inventory by the end of the map. I'll meet you back at the start of Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is an escape map, though given Ike specifically must arrive, it's really a seize map. Titania and Oscar will help ferry Ike there. We do get some bonus EXP for units escaping before Ike, but it is such a trifling amount that the other units we have are better off farming EXP on the map instead. Soren will stay near the start and kill most of the enemies over there, since I worked out he could afford to burn the tome uses, and we do want them dead to keep them away from this. Our units start in the trees, which impairs their initial movement, though at least 2 of the slots are far enough forward to let Titania and Oscar get out immediately. While we can't heal turn 1 given the terrain, we can at least ensure Chris will have a heal target every turn after that. This is also why the hand axe is on Void instead of Titania, so he can get damage on the later turn. Our inventories really are filling up. Convoy axes would be real nice right about now. Soren is rescue drop forward to get him out of the trees and to the EXP bag sooner. Despite all his levels, his base bulk is so bad that the enemies will still prefer to go for him over someone like Ike if they will face a counterattack either way. We left Ike at 7.99 on the previous map just to guarantee his level up here, instead of requiring him to get hit, either here or on the next turn's player phase. Soren's Wind Tome is of course set to 100 crit to continue conserving its uses. Void is basically just going to help assist other units to grow more. Here he shoves Wrist to help him get out of the woods and away from the enemies on the right. Titania can't be carrying Ike on this enemy phase since she needs to clear out the way. Getting Oscar damage turn 1 let us avoid needing to rig him to get hit by this armor for Riss's sake. We're starting to see the effects of sandbagging Titania in Chapter 4 and giving her the weaker Javelin, since she actually fails to one-round that soldier, which sets him up perfectly for Oscar, unless Titania procced counter. I believe these two enemy Axe Cavaliers have AI where they move if one of your units is within 2 full movements of theirs. Even though Void is in range of the other one, that Cav will still choose to go for Soren. Oscar takes the Javelin back to get rid of that soldier who's in the way. We set Ike's sword to 100 crit just to feed him this kill on this soldier. It's not strictly needed. And in fact, with slightly different positioning, you could actually ensure that Oscar escapes this map alongside Ike. But as previously mentioned, it's more productive to just have him kill an enemy instead of escaping for a paltry, I believe it's like 10 bonus EXP on hard mode. Oscar certainly is going to earn more EXP than that just from this kill. Titania needs a crit to kill the boss, who drops the Shot Spear. The Shot Spear is a C rank 1-2 ranged lance, and we won't be getting another one for a while. That gives Riss his last heal target for the map, though he had to rig the Armor Knight to actually land the hit on him, despite Weapon Triangle disadvantage and the Forest's extra void. At the end of the map, we get Mend, which Riss will upgrade to, starting from the next chapter. And Ike will escape after we clean up with Soren, and that'll be chapter 6 in 4 turns. Chapter 7 is another route map and marks the end of the early game, since we will get access to the base after this. It is also where I achieve another turn save over all the previous known continuous LTCs. Soren and Titania will do most of the heavy lifting in this clear, necessitating rigged combat for survival, and setting weapons to max strength. I finagle a bit with units' inventories to ensure I don't need to drop any items during this clear. Oscar will cover the treasure rooms, which have stationary guards at the entrances. With all his training, he's finally killing enemies cleanly. The chest near where Oscar is right now has the Armor Slayer, and we could probably get it if we modified the clear a bit, though it would almost certainly cost Riss a staff use, and the only unit who'd even want to use it anyway is Ike, who has Regal Sword crits to punch through Armor Knights. Oscar had to end his turn in that row or above it in order to trigger an event which will spawn in reinforcements, including the boss, alongside Shannon and Gatry on turn 2. Titania will run through the center and handle the boss area. Most prior LTCs had her also clean up the bottom left since they didn't have access to combat rigging, which forces taking an extra turn on the map. But Soren has enough Wind Tome uses combined with the Fire Tome that drops there to cover that part of the map, with the RNG frozen to ensure his survival. Soren does need a couple of shots on turn 1 to get to that spot where he wants to be, to start cleaning up that part of the map. That soldier who goes for Riss will give him his staff targets on the map, and killing him will be Boyd's job. The green unit who just showed up over there is Mia, who will automatically go talk to Ike if he's within her movement range. Mia comes with Vantage and isn't going to be particularly useful in this run. Being weak and frail, she will get herself damaged on a couple of chapters to create staff targets. Titania doesn't have a hand axe equipped, so she can't counter that soldier, but it's alright, Oscar can kill him. This one soldier just doesn't attack Soren and stands next to him. I'm not sure what's up with that, but Soren can kill him on turn 2. Soren doesn't need to move much on this turn, since he needs to cover the reinforcements who just showed up behind him. Titania can just about barely kill that armor with the steel axe. Since Oscar has gotten so buff, the other armor will choose to attack Titania since neither of them can one-round him. The Armor Knight in the boss's reinforcement squad is stationary, so we need to get right up in his face. He actually walks over to start fighting the two Armor Knights who spawned in as reinforcements, and Shannon moves to that spot to limit the number of enemies from the boss's group he baits over down to 1. But as a result, he needs to enemy face crit the archer. He's 1 off of cleanly killing even with the steel bow. Fire Tongue drop by this mage will give Soren the extra weapon he needs to handle the rest of this map. I did not set fire to 100 crit because Soren is actually strong enough now to double and one-round all the remaining enemies. He only needs the combat rigging to ensure that he actually survives by dodging. I don't really have much to say because a lot of this map is just watching enemies die to us on enemy phase. And Soren's wind finally breaks. Gatray 2-rounds these armors with the Steel Lance, which is why we wanted to make sure the weapon ended up on him at the end of the defend map. He does this job at base, which is also why we didn't really bother investing in him there. Titania kills the priest on turn 3 player phase since he's a completely passive enemy, and will canto to a spot where she can fight the boss and the stationary javelin armor. Her hand axe is going to be set to 100 crit so that she can punch through that armor with a double crit. Soren gets to cover this thief, which gives him a nice dollop of EXP, and he hits level 11. He really has grown a lot in this early game. Oscar ships the chest keys to Shannon, so Shannon can get us the ward staff from the chest which is on the right. We also position them to ensure that Shinan is no longer in range of that Myrmidon, so that the Myrmidon will actually die on enemy phase. As previously mentioned, Shinan and Gatri will hand us their inventories before they leave the party at the end of this chapter, so we don't need to worry about trading their items away, which would be near impossible without ending up losing items. Like, just look at how many items all of our party members have across their inventories. Gatri had to chip that Myrmidon down since he doesn't quite one-shot. And then we'll just watch everybody else die on this enemy phase to conclude Chapter 7 in 3 turns. See you next time!